Ah,
You're good to go. The
okay.
meeting is started.
Yeah. All right. So welcome everyone to this session on leading change. I think I don't have to tell you folks, in this, given this climate about change, I think a lot of people are even sick right now, and families, it's viral, it's COVID, all of that. So I think the last 2 years, I think the whole world has seen a lot of change. So who will emerge as people who are, leading everybody else forward in any sphere of life, right? I think those are folks who have a bit of an edge. So what I'm going to be talking about today, I'll just share in a minute. Wait, where is it? Not advancing. Yeah. I hope all of you know who I am. I'm currently with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, heading the Compute Knowledge Management team. I've been working primarily in technical communications, also training. Actually, I think this is the 36 or 37 years, lost track. And I've always been trying to contribute to all the industry forums. I've also published a book and some poems and anthologies. I have a blog site. I have a YouTube channel called Writing with Sandhya. On my website, varnika.co, all of these are mentioned. Welcome to join me, all of that. That's all my creative endeavors. As I speak, if you have any questions, it's an interactive session. Feel free to stop and, talk about it. And if you can't hear me, do let me know. So some of the objectives of today's session were, identifying your change management style. A lot of you may have gone through change management training, so some of it may be basic, but I think, so for those who haven't, just to level set, we'll, go through that. Understanding the process of change, all of us in corporates do have a change management process, but again, just to cover the basics, we'll have all of that. And what I think we as leaders may be interested in is how do we structure a process for our organization, right, or our teams? How do we lead our teams through change? So the agenda we are going to talk about is, the types of change. And what I'm going to share with you is some toolkits. As I said, some of it you may be familiar with and some may be new. And these are toolkits which I personally, at least a couple of them, I always use. It works. I've learned about it in training programs that I myself have attended, so I thought it would be useful to share. Given this short time, we really can't go into too much of detail, but you're welcome to go and research this further after the session, and I've given some links as well. So, to measure how well you manage change, there's a change adoption curve. And, there are two kinds of changes, personal and organizational change. The toolkits we'll talk about today are quarters model, the 7 hours of implementing change, and process principles. And also what I mentioned in the video, the adaptability quotient. Yes. Okay, so I think there are different kinds of change. I think we all know that, but when we think of change management, we only think primarily of what is a change happening in a company. If you have to change your documentation or the product, but we really need to think holistically. I think anyone who's attended my sessions or works with me know that I always try to think holistically. You can't really have just a professional persona. You bring yourself into the organization, and all of that impacts how, especially you as a leader, work with teams and people. So the types of change are individual, at a personal level, at a team level, could be at an organization level. So I have, again, those who know me know that I have gone through a lot of change in my life. Let's see. I've worked in many companies. In fact, I was just chatting with somebody who was working at Radisys now, I think Soumya. And I worked in Trillium in the US in the late 90s. And that product line still continues. It's with Radisys. So maybe some of the documentation and training we wrote then still exists. So that's amazing. So worked across continents, worked in different companies. I've been laid off, I think, as many of you know. And I've moved not just across continents, but my dad was in the army. So in fact, when I was 36 years old, I counted like how many houses we stayed in, and it was 36 houses. So after that, I stopped counting. But yeah, we've literally, changed places a lot, different cultures. Um, Personally, I have, I, you know, I, I'm divorced and I've adopted a child. So a lot of changes personally as well. Team level, I've been through acquisitions. So I've been in companies which have been acquired by others. Trillium, as I mentioned, was actually acquired by Intel, and later on sold off to another company and got sold off to another company. So yeah, that happens. And I was also in a company called BEA Systems, known for a product called Logic, which got acquired by Oracle. It's a small company which got acquired by a larger company. It's a lot of change. Yes, a lot of change in my life. And, so what I'm sharing is, things which have helped me specifically at work, but there are things on how we personally react to change with help. So what I wanted to do was actually, is it what advancing quickly? Is there anything else I need to do to move to the next screen? Next slide. Maybe some of the answer. All right. So I'm going to now take a minute. I want to interact with all of you. And I want to ask you a question, and all of you, what in the past year, what change, it could be small, it could be big, what change have you experienced? And it could be personal, it could be professional. It needn't necessarily be something which is negative, it could be positive as well. All change, is even a good change is, it's a change, right? So let me get out of my screen view, and maybe I'm not sure if I can see the chat. Yeah, okay, I can see the chat. But maybe easier for me if you just unmute yourself and share. You can also share on chat. So if each one of you can think to the past year, yes. So I think work from home, I think we have all faced that from last year. What else?
Hi, Sandhya. This is Mridula.
Yes.
So last year, something I have never done before happened. I changed two companies in a span of 1 year. So I moved from Salesforce to Copado, and after 10 months at Copado, I took a calculated risk and moved into a completely different domain of robotics and artificial intelligence and warehousing. So that was a huge change for me. And yes, I was nervous, but I felt, this is the time to move into leadership role. And they gave me a fantastic opportunity. So I moved on to this domain.
That's wonderful. He has changed companies. Sharath also has changed companies. He has actually joined our team here, and he got a pet, which is a nice thing. That's a nice, fun thing.
Hi, Sandhya, this is Smita.
Yes.
For me personally and professionally, it was a great change because I joined back to work after 5.5 years. So it was like after a long career break, I came back to work, and it was a lot of changes within the family and professionally also. And but it was really great and going good.
Right. So back to work, I see freelancing to full-time, more of changing companies. Program says back to full-time to lead a team from freelancing. What else? Just moving it here so I can type in. Okay. Any others? Okay, I can see Subhash, also new role, tech docs to tech marketing and solution engineering as a technology editor. New role. What else? Oh, Okay, personally, I think part of the work from home, some of the good part is more time for family and health. Some have messaged me privately. So focus on health, focus on family. What else? Any others? Started cooking, yes. I think with all the, lockdowns, shutdowns, whatnot, I think a lot of us have to kind of, actually, I think a lot of us have become amateur professional cooks, or cooked after a long time, right? Moved to a new place. Yeah. Wow, a lot of change just here. And more responsibility. So another divorce. Spend time on hobbies. Yes, I think a lot of us, since we're online, have had to getting more
And
time.
for me, I would say, yes, Smita here, I would say I
Yeah.
became more organized.
Yeah. Creative writing. Organized could be both personal and professional. Just put it here since I'm running out of space there. Wonderful. Great list. So, and this, yeah. So as you can see, there's a lot of change that we've all been through. So it's amazing. It looks like pretty much almost everybody. Of course, the whole work from home has impacted every single person probably over here. And but in addition to that, there are so many other changes that you've been through. And as you can see, when you talk of change, you don't just focus on the professional, but you also have to think of the personal. And there are some things which are, happy events, and there are also not so happy events, right? So the reason I mentioned that is all of this causes some stress in us psychologically. It can be good stress, it can be bad stress, but it is still stress, right? So if you move to a new place, that's great, it's wonderful, but yeah, just moving, setting up all of that. Oh, I must say, I have actually modified my house. So for the nth time, so I'm just putting it down because, yeah, that, takes a lot of managing and all of that as well. So one thing I wanted to share with you is the human mind, and this is something which I learned in one training, and I found it incredibly useful, that the human mind is capable of processing only 2 to 3 major things at a time. So 2 to 3 changes at a time. All right, so that is a good tip to remember. So if you are going through some change, either voluntarily or involuntarily, try to keep the rest of your life stable, right? So that's a tip. And especially if you're going through one major change, maybe you can go to a couple of minor changes. I know somebody on my team actually got married recently, so I'm just going to add that. And some people had babies. Yeah. So if you have changed companies, then maybe try to, at the same time, don't try to move house or get a pet or whatever it is. So try to balance it. If it's more than 3 changes at a time, the human mind just, we're not so sophisticated. We can't handle it, and all it means is we feel overwhelmed, right? And we get stressed, and that's when we cannot manage change. So that is a tip on how do you just keep and be aware of the personal changes as well. So if you think that, okay, at work, only this one thing is there, or I can take on more and more. But if you have some major changes going on, in life, there is some life events, which could be happy or could be not so happy, as I said. But then try to keep the professional life a little low profile. And that's perfectly okay. That's all about balance. I always talk about balance, and this is how you stay balanced, and you can manage change for yourself personally, as well as with the team. So you as leaders have to sort of lead the change, right? So lead how you personally manage it, and that's how you can help everybody. Anytime if you have comments or questions, you can let me know, but I'll keep going because we have a lot more to cover. All right, many of you may have seen this. This is called a change adoption curve. So there is a curve on how people manage change, how individuals, teams, even companies manage change. So sometimes this is also called the this I picked up from a technology adoption curve, since we work in tech companies. But it is how quickly people accept change. And there are these categories, fairly straightforward. I'll just share with you. So the innovators are the ones right in front, want to take risks. They have the resources, desire, and they don't mind failing, but they want to keep innovating. They want to be ahead. Then there are early adopters. So they're selective, and they want to see what's going to work, and they want to explore a little bit anything new. They want to explore, find the information, and then they're ready to adopt it. The early majority, they take their time, and they're okay. They're willing to embrace it as long as they understand it fully. They understand how it works. I think now in our companies, we keep having all these new communication tools being rolled out, right? So as we speak, we are moving from Skype to Microsoft Teams, and I think many of our companies are doing that. So who's the one who's just stopped? The minute it was announced, that person just kind of logged out of Skype and got into Teams. That's an innovator. The next set of people who kind of started using it would be an early adopter. The early majority, which is normally the most, and late majority, right? So these are the two major categories. So early majority, they are, once they understand how to use Teams, then they start using it. Late majority is they wait till the rest of the team has started using it, and then finally it's like, all right, I need to get on board. Everybody's messaging me in Teams and I'm not replying, so I better get over there. And the laggards are like, Skype was working fine for me. I don't know why we're moving. So we moved to something else in the past and moved back to Skype. So why does IT keep forcing us to change tools, right? So they are the ones who are laggards. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and we are actually going to take a short poll, all of you. And Sharath, if you can share in the chat, if you see the link in the chat, please click on the link and just share, just answer, where do you think that you fall, right? With this description, and of course your names are not given, so just be honest. Are you an innovator, an early adopter, early majority, late majority, or a laggard? I'll keep the screen on so you can see the description, but if you can just go over there, I'll give you like 30 seconds. You just have to click on one. So please go ahead and do that. And at the end of it, Sharath, if you will share the results with us. Yes, everybody has done it. It just takes you a few seconds, really. Sharath, can you see the voting? How it is?
12 responses so far.
12 responses. Yeah, the rest of you, I think that's half of you have responded. Just go ahead, click on the link, just select this is just your own self-assessment. Where do you think you fall in the change adoption curve? How do you manage change, whether it's personal or professional? How many people are there in the call? I'm not able to see.
We have 29 people on the call.
Okay. Yes, rest of you have also gone ahead and added. If you have any question or didn't understand the description, feel free to ask me. Okay, I think that's enough time. So Sharath, will you be able to share?
Responded now. I'll share my screen.
Yeah. You can just grab it, right? Or do I need to stop?
I think I can grab.
Yeah. All right, that's fantastic. That's absolutely brilliant to see that we have so many in the early adopter innovators. So I think that's a great for you as TechCom leaders. I think you're doing fantastically if you are innovators and early adopters. And so that means that you are leading the change and driving the change. And the rest are in the early majority and late majority. No one is a laggard so far. That's wonderful. I think I've seen actually in our culture, I think we're very adaptable and ready for change. So this is a brilliant score. So if you can just capture this, Sharad, I'll add it in the PPT later. Yeah, thank you. Any comments on this? Any surprises? Anybody? Yeah, if you can just, so do I grab?
Hi, Sandhya.
Yeah.
Hi, Sandhya. Hi, Sandhya. Hi. Sorry, my voice is very low. Having
No problem.
throat pain.
Yeah.
I think like that decision people take basically depending upon what kind of change and how easy to adopt it. If they feel it is very difficult from the current one, most of them are so reluctant. But if they feel it is very easy and there is not much change from the present one, I think people easily get adapted to the next whatever the change.
Yes. So that's a very insightful comment. Absolutely. I think it's the difference from where you are now to the new level. And if it is not much of a distance to travel, it's easier for people to adopt change. The further away it is from your current reality, I think the more challenging it is, or the more people want to understand how this is going to work. And that makes it more difficult. So what this means is, as you see, one is you're thinking of it personally, but how does it translate to when you're trying to drive change or in a team, right? To understand that. So everybody, you're dealing with people, whether it's stakeholders or customers or whoever. So for all of them to adopt also the same thing. So if you're going to make a radical change, you have to make it easy for them to understand and to adopt and to accept it, right? So let's move on to a few more kind of toolkits. So this is what we're talking about. So personally, there is a curve in how we, go through change. And I guess this is more of a change. And it, as I said, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad change, but if it's different, right? Whether it was a long time ago to move from even print to online, there was a lot of resistance. So, it starts with denial. It's like, no, I think people are still using print books, and why do we need to move to denial? There is an initial resistance. There's a second phase. Then they're like, all right, everybody's doing it. Let's check it out. And finally, there's a commitment. So how can you as a leader help, your organization go through this? Firstly, communicate clearly, communicate what the change is, see, and when it's a resistance stage, listen to what they're saying. So if we don't listen and if you just say, no, this is what we're going to do and let's plow ahead with it, you're losing people right there. So you need to listen and observe what they're saying. And if they're saying they don't understand, just as I said, Smita, what is it? Is it going to be easy for me? Make it easy for them to understand the change and adopt it. So training is a huge key role in it. How is it going to help them perhaps? And when they do, have a little celebration. So, have a success, and that's going to help in that commitment. I'm just going to keep moving on the slides. Anytime you have any questions or comments, feel free to share. Okay, so this is one model which I have absolutely, I think this is brilliant for driving organizational change. I learned it in one a middle management course, I think from Duke University, but I've seen it in pretty much every change management training I've been in. So you can actually use it as a framework. When you're creating a plan, put these 8 items and then put your tasks and action plan against this, right? So especially when TechCom teams try to create change, sometimes we find it difficult for others to adopt it. May not even be customers, often it's just stakeholders, right? So it could be a big change, it could be a small change. So there are 3 steps. You have to create the climate for change first. So you can't just jump in and say that, so whether it's adopting data or let's say even moving to minimalism, right? Reducing screenshots, so much resistance from engineering teams. And maybe many of you face that. Just because they've always been used to seeing documentation that way and they feel they own some of the content and they're like, no, we have to keep adding screens. And only kind of, okay, for us, we understand this is how modern trends are and it's less work for us, obviously, but they're not interested in that. And that's not a, kind of compelling reason for them. So create the climate for change, you have to start out, create urgency, right? So create urgency could be like, we've had resource cuts. I'm saying this because I think this is a common theme everywhere. We always have resource cuts in companies, in telecom teams. So we used to have one resource before, and now we have a 0.5, 0.25. We just don't have, that's the amount of time we have on the document. So if you have just 5 hours on document, what do you want to focus on? On technical accuracy or putting in 100 screens, right? So you have to create that urgency that, okay, no, we have to think about this. We have to think about streamlining. And this is one of the things. Form a powerful coalition. So maybe it resonates with somebody on the program teams. The product manager understands, or an engineering team lead understands, a QA person understands, whatever. Find out the people who are who understand it immediately, buy in, and form use them as your ambassadors for within that team. So create a vision for change. It's like, okay, this is our competitor docs. I mean, they are so clean and sleek, and this is what they look like. Then communicate the vision, show it, and say, look, this is what everybody is doing. This is, and we also need to move over there. Empower action. So, and you need to empower your team, whether it's the graphics or the writers, to go ahead and make the change, right? All right, it's not that, okay, when everybody gives a buy-in, we'll do it, just help empower them. Let's go ahead and change it and create quick wins. Maybe do it in one document, right? Just pick up the installation guide, remove this, just keep a few key screens and do a pilot and just show it, demonstrate it. And when they see that and they're like, yes, this is cleaner, this takes less of a footprint if it's going to be embedded in the product, then you can build on the change. Then build on the change, then you can roll it out across your product line. And make it stick. That's important. That's important. I think that's where the difference. So up to 7, I think, even as managers, a lot of us go through it and we can keep working on it. But making it stick is where it takes, more of leadership skills. We did one, if we were in person, we would have done this activity when I was attending this class. What we did was, they made us all stand up and, change our dress, just put on a hat and do weird stuff, remove our footwear, do all kinds of silly things. In 1 minute, they made us do all these things. And then we all had a good laugh and they said, okay, you can go back to your seat. And we quickly, put on our shoes, removed the bands, did whatever and went and sat down. What did that mean? Given the opportunity, we wanted to snap back to our old world, which we are comfortable and familiar with. Right? We didn't want to kind of change. I mean, that was just a small exercise, but that's how the human mind works. They're ready for some time, but then maybe they're not ready always. So I think continue that, be persistent, make it happen again and again. And that's how you as a leader can drive it. Any questions or comments here? Because I think this is, one of the most key slides in this presentation. Okay, I'll move on to the change management process. This, I think everybody's familiar with. This is a standard process which I think all our projects use, but I've just put it in here in case your project doesn't use it, please do recommend. And often project teams use it, but in documentation it doesn't, right? So whenever there is a change request, like a last minute change or change in scope, change in requirements, they go ahead and keep time for changing the product, but they often don't give time for documentation. They say, okay, just put in make these changes and we still need to keep to the same release deadline. But no, a product release includes a product as well as documentation. So you're perfectly within your rights to kind of say that, if there is going to be a change in documentation, Let's go through the same change management process, raise a change request. And if you have a tool, use the tool. So if they have a tool in the program, use it for documentation as well. So there's an impact analysis done. There is some leader who approves or denies it. And if it's approved, this is what implement the change. So give the time for that. It's going to take this much time. It's going to be delayed by a week. If you don't want that, let's release it as is, and then we'll do a follow-up release a week later, and then come back and report, right? Standard change management process. So does it all work smoothly in your organizations, or do any of you find challenges when it comes to documentation that you're often pressured to make changes, right? And you're not given the time or the resources or the bandwidth to work on it? Any comments or stories here?
Hi, Sandhya, I'm Mridula again.
Yeah.
So in my previous organization, they were big time into CI/CD, like continuous improvement, continuous delivery. But what they forgot to keep in mind is that documentation is a small part of that delivery. So
Yes.
although everything was very swift, we hardly used to get time to give, we never used to get enough time to put that much of effort in the documentation. So we always used to work with a MVP, you just push it out and then keep improvising the documentation.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that's a lot of everyone's experience as well. I saw that Vishaka commented that it's often not followed for doc, but there are companies which follow this process as well. So if your company doesn't, I think this is where you as a leader, right, can just drive it in the program team or the project team that, let's follow the same CI/CD process for documentation as well. And if you find it difficult to implement this, remember the Kotter model, go back to that, create an urgency. Why should they do it? So you have just this small team, one person, whatever it is, that you need to, for doing this. So therefore, you just can't stretch and do that. See if it resonates with somebody. Generally, the senior leaders, often understand it. It's only when we dealing with others in the program team who are equally busy, right? So, and then they can't understand why we have to delay it. But yeah, if they want to do, so once they go through this, they understand that, okay, if I may give an input too late to doc, it's not going to be accepted. So I better think of it earlier on. So often you'll find the program manager or the product managers often understands your point of view. So try to get them on board. Yeah. And keep sharing these insights as we go along. As I try to move to the next slide. Where does this happen? Okay. Yeah. So, and then the other thing about change, and often, when we think of change works, and sometimes it doesn't. Change fails as well. So why does change fail? So asking these questions will help you to ensure that the change works well. And again, you can use this as a template or a boilerplate. Each time there's a change, put that in and understand that. Who raised the change? So it could even be innovation. You want to do some innovation, and you think it's a great idea to have videos or AR, VR, or all of those things, but you find that there is a lot of resistance for it. So why is there a resistance? Why is it not working? So go back and see who asked for the change. If it's going to be driven purely by TechCom or Tech Docs, you might face some resistance. But if it is, you bring in the customer point of view, that customers are requesting this, they have this, competitors are doing this, and this is how they're consuming information, I think that makes a difference, right? On the who. What is the reason? Yes. So it's not just that, okay, we think it's a cool thing to do, but this is what, where the trends are, where things are moving, so we need to keep pace. What is the return on investment? I think this is what all the leaders generally ask. That's great. We like videos, but we do need the product docs off. And if you can find extra cycles, you can do it. Right? If they're not willing to provide that extra bandwidth, then it's challenging for you as a leader or as a team that to work on it. What are the risks involved? As I said, so it's balancing. So are you going to drop the product docs or create the video? So what is the risk involved in that? The resources that are required. Who's responsible for build, test, implement? So it's not just you creating the video. You do need review by the project team as well. So and maybe it needs to be incorporated in the product. So there is an impact on them as well. What's the relationship between this change and other changes? That's very important to understand the context. If out of the blue we talk about, yeah, let's release one video, it's hard. But then if it is like overall, we are trying to streamline and improve our documentation based on customer feedback, and this is one item amongst them, this is easier to kind of absorb and understand. And so just you can keep this as a template that you can use. Yeah. Okay, this I found was rather interesting. PROCE's 7 Principles of Change Management. Because PROCE, I think, is an organization. They provide change management certification. So if any of you are interested, I have provided links at the end. And they have different models. So the other models were fairly straightforward, things that you and I have probably seen before. I found this one a little different, so I thought, let me share that, right? So let's start with senders and receivers. There are people who who give information about the change, and there are people who receive them. So the change could be anything. Maybe you're implementing data in the system, right? So maybe you as TechCom are giving that information that we're making this change, and who's the receiver? Receiver is probably all your engineering and project teams. So there is a certain degree of resistance, which comes in over here. So just realizing that whatever you're saying, maybe not what the receiver hears, right? If you're saying, oh, we moved to data and you're really excited about it, a senior leader is hearing that, oh, we need more resources, we need more money for new tools, we need more time built in, we need to get vendors. So while you are trying to communicate one thing, what they're hearing is something else. So understand that there is a difference in perspective between the senders and receivers. And then it comes to the level of resistance and comfort. I think as Smita shared, if it's something which is not too difficult, it's easier. There's a degree of comfort, easier for people to accept. But if it is more challenging, then there is a resistance. So when we also, I can share an example when we're talking about data with senior leadership. You would think that they would be excited that we're going with industry trends, what's modern, it's modular, they can understand modular, right? They're creating code in modules as well. But still there was so much resistance. Why were you doing this? What difference does it make? How is it going to help? Till one time I actually had to take in the Lego building blocks and physically demonstrate to them how it is possible to make different objects with same building blocks. So I had to do that to sort of get the message across. Then the authority for change. Now, again, this is an important thing as well, right? So do you have the authority? You may have the authority to actually drive data, but how are we going to get it adopted, right? So here is where I think executive sponsorship helps. And when you say executive sponsorship, a senior leader, whether depending on your organization, whether it's a VP or even whoever it is, a very senior person who kind of sponsors it. And not just sponsors it by putting their name to it, but actively also saying, yes, I really believe in it, and kind of evangelizing that to other organizations. And I've seen that as well. So I've been in an organization where the MD himself, he was like very savvy, very up to date with all the trends, even though he's from a technical background. He's like, yeah, this was like 10 years ago. And he's like, yes, we should all move to data. And he told all the, all the teams at engineering, QA, all that, yes, I've told the doc team that we need to move to data and we'll do it. And that made it so much easier to sort of, migrate and work through all the other things. Also, when you're trying to drive change, understand what's the value. We all have different values, different culture. If you're working across locations, we have different cultures. Companies have value systems, as we all know, especially those We have talked of people who have moved companies once, twice, thrice even. So each company may be similar, but may be different as well. So just listen, observe and understand what is the value system, what is the leadership, what is the company here? Is it more resistant to change, more open to change? And you have to go along with that. So a company which is an innovator, disruptor, they're ready to, if you are an innovator yourself, they'll be ready to listen to your ideas and go through it. But if you, grade your company itself on the change adoption curve, if your company is more an early, maybe adopter, or even early majority, maybe even a late majority, based on that, it may be difficult, that's that much more challenging for you to sort of drive change. This is my favorite. There are two kinds of change, incremental and radical change. So I think incremental, yeah, you're just making small steps, small changes. People find it easier to absorb that because it doesn't make too much change to their life, right? But if there's going to be a radical change, that's when you'll find more resistance, even if it's a positive change with employees as well. So I think that's something to be aware of. And this is powerful. The right answer is not good enough. So it's not good enough to just know that, yes, you have to move to data. You have to follow this whole, understand the whole process, and know that just because you think the answer is right doesn't mean that people are going to embrace it directly, even employees, because they might feel, oh, there is now more time I have to spend in learning, but I have to do releases as well. It may be difference across culture. Somebody who's worked for 20, 30 years as a tech writer, it's like, yeah, this is how I've always been doing. I don't really want to move to something very different. So I think understand that change management is basically a structured way of dealing with change to make sure it works, just like anything else. So it's not something which is very esoteric, but it is something very real and very practical for doing your day-to-day work itself. And as I mentioned, so the change management process is straightforward, but change is a process. Go through the steps. So don't think that you've decided on a change, it's going to be adopted right away. Remember the 8 steps, Kotter's 8 steps. So that is a process that you need to follow. And that's what's going to make it stick. I'm just going to just have a last couple of slides, and then if we have questions, and we can interact on that. So this is what I spoke about, adaptability quotient. So there is a book called Adapt or Die. And in fact, there are a series of books, I think, in different contexts. And this deals more with like a battlefield kind of context as well. That's how it starts, right? I think, armies or whoever, if they're not flexible with how they are dealing, then, they literally it might be their lives on stake. But if you think in the context of companies, as they say, the ability to adjust course or product, service, strategy in response to unanticipated changes in the market. So far, we've talked about things that you have thought about and you want to drive. But what if something else happens, some disruptive thing happens, right? You are acquired by another company. They have a different style guide, they have a different tool, they have a different process, which may be better or worse than yours. What if your company has acquired a new doc team, and they feel that they have a much better system than yours, and then they keep working on it. How do you react to it? Do you just put your heels in the ground and say, this way we have always been doing, we are the greatest and we're not going to change, right? Or are you going to look at, okay, so what's new in what they're doing? What's different? What's better? Can we adopt some of that, right? So I think that's something we always need to see. I think we all know about companies which have not responded well to change and responded well to change. But can any of you think of any companies, and I'm talking about any companies, whether it's IT or any sector, which haven't responded to change well, and then it has impacted them. So either they no longer exist or it's not worked well for them. Any examples anybody would like to share?
Generally, Kodak and Nokia.
Yes. Yeah. Those are those are two huge examples. I think Kodak for sure wouldn't, kind of react to the change to, going to digital, and therefore that whole huge brand. And I loved photography, and I used to always buy this Kodak, those 36 rolls, and use them. And I was so sad when they just went out. But yeah, but Fujifilms, which adapted, they still exist. Nokia, as you said, BlackBerry. Yes, I've used the initial BlackBerry brick, and that was so cool. And yes, and who have adapted. So Nokia's adapted a bit. Are there any companies who have adapted and changed? Any brands, and therefore they're still ahead? I mean, I can talk of my company, Hewlett Packard. When I joined, it was Hewlett Packard, and it's one of the founding companies of Silicon Valley. So a very old company, and they just sort of split the company in half. We became Hewlett Packard and Hewlett Packard Enterprise. They split it. It became two equally big Fortune 50 companies. But to change that, and then Hewlett Packard Enterprise, which again, we're known for products, right? Whether it's hardware or software, and we are moving to as a service. So yeah, remarkably agile for such an older companies. Big companies find it hard to change, but that's been a lot of change. And if you look at your organization, so this may be something for you to be aware of. Just go and
Sandhya has some network issues. She'll probably join in.
hi Sharath, can you see me now?
Yes, we can see you and hear you now.
Yeah, so power went off, and yeah, I just switched my network. So yes, yeah, yes. I think the whole cloud story for every company, it's been so interesting to watch. I think a lot of companies have, gone late into the cloud game. Obviously, we have the leaders in the space, whether it is Amazon and Microsoft. I think those are pretty much, and everybody else has tried to get there and have different cloud stories. So that could be a whole session just by itself. Right. So what does it mean to doc? That's at a company level. So what can you do for content, right? So these are things which you, in your teams as leaders, you can continue to do. Just have either each person, or you can have a small effort initiative which is continuously looking at content trends and bringing it back. You may or may not implement it. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be an innovator always. As I said, understand your company culture, go along with that. If your company is an early majority and doesn't really want to be an innovator, that's perfectly fine. Just to keep pace with that, right? But benchmark with other competitor peer companies, that could be another initiative which is going on. And how does it translate for you? It's content strategies, right? Whether it's for visual or textual content strategies. Decide what you want to be. Do you want to just stay on par? Is it okay to be a little behind the curve? Do you want to be ahead of the curve? And all of it is perfectly fine. As I said, there is no one completely right answer at whether to do this or not. You have to look at it in the whole context, as I've shared before. And what is your goal as a leader is to actually be relevant and stay relevant, not just for yourself, but for your team. Especially for TechCom teams, as a lot of change happens. The change needn't just be in the content space. It could be a company, there could be you're being acquired, there may be layoffs, there's job security, issues, all of that. So how can you help yourself or your team is by staying relevant. And I think Anu was going to share a presentation on that sometime, so I look forward to that. I think that will be very important as well. And do understand, there's a lot of what I've spoken about, it's to do with you internally. So don't forget that change is a psychological process, is an emotional process. At the end of the day, it translates into work and things, or data, or videos, or whatever it is. But it is an internal process. So, manage your stress. As we were talked about initially, there is good stress and bad stress, but it is still stress. Okay. And take care of your health in these times. Just the basics, good nutrition, just whatever exercise works for you. Take care of your emotional and your health, and just manage your stress. Be aware of it. Don't just be running so fast on the treadmill that it gets very difficult, or it impacts your health if something happens, and then you have to wake up to it. So I think those who are adaptable, kind of stay ahead of the curve, but just manage your change. As I said, just remember, there's nothing else. You can only handle 3 changes at once effectively. More than that, stop. Go back. Either individually you decide that, okay, I'm only going to do this. If your team is going through a lot of change, talk to your team, your leader, your manager, and say that, I think we are just doing too many changes. Let's just do these, and then we will do these. Because that's just how the human mind works, and that's not going to kind of change. And with that, these are the resources. There is a book, Leading Change by John Cotter. That is the definitive guide for change management. Definitely recommend that. I've given you a link to the PROSI training. So if you wanted to take this training into your organization, you can do certification over there if you feel it's really important. The adaptability quotient, I've given a white paper. You have to give your email ID and they'll share it with you. These are just some resources, but if any of this resonates with you or you feel it's helpful, you can go ahead and kind of share it. So with that, the summary. So it all starts from yourself. Leadership always starts with self-awareness. So understand how you react to change. Use the toolkits that I've shared, and you don't have to use all of it, but just to see what you need, for your situation. And very importantly, take care of yourself and your team as you go through or lead this change, right? So thank you very much for listening. Sharad will be sharing a feedback link on the session, and take a minute or so to kind of go through it. I think Sharad has shared it in the chat, and so you can click on it, provide your feedback. Those who have done 5 sessions will get a certification from Twin. We will, whenever people have completed at some point, we will share it out. So yes, so we do have a few minutes. Anybody has any questions or comments, I can take that now. Thanks, Sachin.
Yeah.
Hi.
Again.
Yes.
I feel like if we take each change as an opportunity, if we consider each change as an opportunity to learn something or take it as a challenge, mainly as an opportunity to learn something or find something out of it, then it is easy. Instead of resisting. And again, depends upon various conditions like the time and the complexity of change. But still, one day we may have to get into that change. So take it as an opportunity and then try to get into that.
Yes.
That's what I feel.
I think, yeah, no, absolutely. It's how you take change, right? I think, and that's like sort of a cliche thing about every change is an opportunity, but yeah, it's absolutely right. And anytime anything happens, it's like, what's the opportunity? Okay, work from home is a change, but what's the opportunity? We can have online sessions like this. We can, we can balance work better. So everything, I think that's the way you take it. And that also helps in how you, sort of how it impacts you in terms of stress. Yeah, Edwin, yeah, need to look at these tools. Definitely recommend at least a quarter model for driving change. Thanks, Sunita. Yeah, so much to take away. Sachin, thanks so much. Any tips that you as leaders want to share, what worked for you when you're trying to drive change?
Surag has a question on chat.
Okay.
Is looking for a change advice for someone who has more than 2 decades of experience. that is nothing changed in the company, but changing because personal interest has changed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think looking for a change in terms of change in a company, um, that depends on what your kind of motives. So I think you need to understand your own objectives. So I think that goes to, I guess, if you have your development plan, right? Like, this is what I want to do. So either it is, I'm looking for this title, I'm looking for stability or not, I'm looking for this role, I'm looking for a variety of experience. So I think you have to be very clear in your goal, especially as senior leaders. You may have a lot of options in front of you, but you have to decide for yourself what is your primary goal based on either your, not just your professional, but also personally, right? And I can share my own experience. I have close to, it's looking like 4 decades of experience, but for me, what's important to me is definitely stability. As a single mom, I think it's very important for me that, for my daughter is small, so, she has a whole education, a whole life ahead of her. So I do need, financial stability. That's very important for me. And I have, but, there is a lot of things that I like to do. So that I'm compensating by doing things like this, like in the industry, contribute in the industry, all my creative endeavors that some of you may know, be aware of. So that's where I bring in the change. So I keep my core stable because that's my objective. But then if you decide that, no, I want to move to a larger role, I want to move to something different, that's, you can, go ahead and look for that. As you said, if your personal interest has changed. So, Sudhak, does that make sense? Okay. Has anyone else, I hope everybody has filled in the feedback form. Any other questions, comments, or best practices to share? And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and share it on the Manage the Docs site. And I do want this year that we actually interact more over there as well. It's on LinkedIn. We have Manage the Docs. I hope we are all part of it. And we can continue discussions there. You can continue sharing best practices over there, so you can do all of that. So thank you very much for sparing an hour over here. Wish you a great year ahead. Happy New Year. And we'll come back with more, sessions and interesting activities from the docs. Thanks, folks. If you've finished the feedback form, you can carry on with your day. If you want to stay and chat, most welcome. I'm here for a few more minutes.
Thank you, Sandhya.